It is August 29th, 2022, and Jack Hammer is still here to talk 49ers football. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hammerhead Show, the Monday edition. I'm Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, and with me, as always, on Monday, my good pal, Rob Shue. Rob, anything happening today?
No, slow news day. Just headed into the 53-man cut down. A few things bubbling up on Twitter, but nothing of serious note, Jack. Nothing that would inflame all of 49er faithful in some way or another. Man, what a news day.
Yeah, I was actually busy with work today. I stepped away for lunch and walked back into my office and picked up my phone. And what do you know? 49ers decided to keep a quarterback that none of us thought was actually going to be on the roster, huh?
Yes, indeed.
Jimmy Garoppolo going to be a 49er in 2022 after all. 49ers were able to restructure his contract. And before I get too far into it, Rob, give me your thoughts on this whole thing.
I mean, it's wild from the outset, right? I did not see this coming. I did repeatedly, as a disclaimer, continually put out there, hey, as a reminder, there's a chance that Jimmy Garoppolo is still on this roster. So I saw it as a possibility, but a very, very remote one that I did not believe would come to fruition. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo was due to get cut. Didn't believe he would take the type of pay cut that he did in order to stay with the 49ers, at least in the base of this salary that they renegotiated. And I mean, I have to say that initially my thoughts are mixed. I both believe that this makes our roster better. There's just no doubt in my mind that when you supplant Nate Sudfeld with Jimmy Garoppolo as your backup quarterback, you have made your roster better. And I view this roster as one that can compete in the postseason. So in that vein, it's very positive. I will also admit that I think it complicates the locker room, and that can't be ignored. Does it need to be overstated? Is it something that's going to, drive this team in two and cause them to splinter? No, not necessarily. But could it? Yeah, I think it could. I think that this is a delicate situation that now will need to be handled delicately throughout the season, and one that will keep people like us talking about it, and it will be at the forefront. So it just becomes a question of is Trey able to block out the noise in my mind?
Yeah. No, and it's wild. This was something that I talked about this scenario happening too many times to count during the season last year and early on into the offseason on the Hammer Nails show with Jesse Naylor quite a bit. And Jesse would roll his eyes and I'd kind of roll my eyes a little bit, just knowing what I was saying and understanding how it was taken. And it was something that from a football standpoint made sense, but I never thought that Jimmy Garoppolo would sign the deal.
Right.
That's the thing. I just never thought that Jimmy Garoppolo would go for it. I thought the 49ers might throw it out there, but I never expected Jimmy Garoppolo to say, you know what, I'm willing to take $15 million less or almost $20 million less to be on your team as the backup. I just never expected that to happen.
It is wild. And maybe he still sees it as his best chance at earning himself a starting role, in that he gets to stay with a team that if Lance misses any time, he can step in without missing a beat, show his talents on a team where he's comfortable with the system and potentially earn himself a future deal. Or, the no trade clause is in there, but obviously Jimmy could waive that if a team comes along that he still wants to partner with. I'm guessing that there could be a trade scenario, but I see that as somewhat unlikely. I agree with you. I'm surprised that Jimmy Garoppolo agreed to this deal. It has upside, certainly, if he gets in and starts for the 49ers and he earns those incentives that could take this deal up to close to 17 million or in that neighborhood. That's a decent contract, but to go down from 24 million to what appears to be a $7 million deal to hold the clipboard for Trey Lance, that's a significant negotiation by the 49ers. It does save a little bit of face for John Lynch and being able to say, I may have lost the trade, but I won this deal.
They definitely won this part of the deal. I think it was for the 49ers, it was the best move for the team, in my opinion. It's the best move for the team, and it's the best business decision move for the team as well. So from a football standpoint, it's a home run. From a team standpoint and a business, like football business standpoint, I think it's a home run as well. Now, on the team side, we'll get to that in a minute as far as what my thoughts are on there. Real quick, I do wanted to shout out Lucas from Austria, who's in the house. He says he's a member of the Toolbox. He's got the dollar sign there. Says, hey, Jack, what a crazy day. Yeah, just a little bit crazy. Just a few things going around. Quesadilla Thriller coming in with the 71, another member of the Toolbox. It's insurance. Yeah, I seem to remember somebody giving me a hard time back in late July when I said the 49ers would be a better roster with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance on the team than otherwise. Somebody tell me something about spending $20+ million on insurance and how you shouldn't do that, but it happened. I'm trying not to be a jerk.
Taking your victory laps. Come on.
No, I'm not really taking a victory lap yet because I think you're right in the way that that there is a possibility of this turning into a trade still. I think that was part of it. And I don't think it's a slam dunk that he's going to be around. Now it makes it much easier for him to be moved if a situation arises where a team wants him.
Yeah.
Bryant Culp, another member of the Toolbox, says, I think I just won my Subway bet with Rob Shue.
This is a victory lap. This one is a very clear victory lap. And Bryant, I have to acknowledge that, yes, as much as I despise the idea, it appears I will be buying a Subway gift card. That I never thought that would be the case, but here it is. And I am a man of my word, so I will absolutely be paying up. I hope to see your mailing address in my email soon.
There you go. There you go. It's or what is it? The Supremo Italiano or whatever it is. Is that what the sandwich was that he was hawking off?
I don't even know, but it sounds about right. That seems like a Garoppolo specialty.
Oh man, it's interesting, right? It's interesting. And when you look at this whole thing, Rob, I want to ask you, what do you think this says about where this team is and whose team it is, really, more than anything?
Yeah, it's interesting. The fan base wants this declaration of it's Trey Lance's team. And I get that. And I wanted to hear that myself. I wanted this franchise to say, Trey Lance is our guy. Shout it from the rooftops and to anyone that would listen, and twice on Sunday. And we were never getting that, but it felt like, okay, well, they're just hedging their bets until the trade happens, and then they'll really push their chips behind Trey Lance and show their support for this young gentleman. And now they've made this move, which will be used. Let's be very clear. This move will be used by those that don't believe in Trey Lance as proof that the 49ers don't believe in him either. And I think that's taking it way too far. But with your question to whose team this is, it does demonstrate that it's not either quarterback's team, right? It does seem to indicate that it's Kyle Shanahan's team and that he's going to do with this thing as he sees fit, and to build out a better roster with a better backup quarterback in a Super Bowl window, which I believe the 49ers and this roster are in, gives you a better chance to win. If something goes wrong, Trey misses time, you don't miss a beat. It's not like you're handing over the reins to Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah. Or Brock Purdy, right? Either one of those two guys. And, there's been a lot of talk about the 49ers roster and how good this roster is. And there's been a lot of rankings of this 49ers roster and how good it is. And a lot of people have ranked it, probably in I don't know exactly, but that hasn't really been near the top of the league. And a lot of the reasoning why is because they weren't sure about the quarterback situation. There was even one that I saw today in which they took the quarterbacks out of it. And one of the people, I think it was Chris Sims, said the 49ers have the best roster outside of the quarterback in the NFL. I think this move means the 49ers have the best roster in the NFL because now they have a young starting quarterback that they used a first round pick, number 3 overall, to acquire last year. They have a quarterback who's led them to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship game in the last 3 years on the roster. And as I mentioned earlier, from a football standpoint, this is a home run, slam dunk, whatever you want to call it. It's from a business standpoint, it's the same. Now it's all on Kyle Shanahan to do what he did last year and make it work. And that's that. More than anything, this move shows who the man is in Santa Clara. It's Kyle Shanahan.
It truly is. And I like what you call out, that from a football perspective, it's just very difficult to make a rational argument, not emotional. Very easy to make an emotional argument against Jimmy Garoppolo. That's simple. Ask any 49er faithful who has been scarred by one too many passes to an opposing linebacker. Easy to make that emotional argument against this. But when you strictly look at quality of player on the depth chart and you substitute Nate Sudfeld for Jimmy Garoppolo, you cannot make a compelling argument where you convince me that this roster is not significantly better with Jimmy Garoppolo on there. To the business standpoint that you talk about, $24 million, yeah, too much to pay a backup quarterback. $10 million, now we're talking. Andy Dalton got $10 million. $7 million for a quarterback of Jimmy Garoppolo's stature, if he doesn't end up starting any games, is a cheap insurance plan and a brilliant business move. It is getting value for an asset that had been devalued. Teams were quite obviously waiting with the pressure of this looming release happening. They obviously thought, as we did, the 49ers were up against in between a rock and a hard place, and we're going to need to cut Jimmy Garoppolo maybe tomorrow, maybe holding him up until September 10th if they wanted to flirt with disaster and cut an extra player. The Niners said, no, we've got a third option, and we're going to renegotiate this thing. It was brilliant. Again, I have my concerns about the emotional pull of this, the emotional toil of this decision on the locker room, but we won't know the answer to that until we get into the season.
Yeah, you make a really good point about that emotional pull of the locker room, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But before we do, I want to hit up the super chat from Ken Martin. Thank you very much for the donation, the $5 super chat. He says, too many fans of player over what's best for the team. This is an amazing move for the 49ers Super Bowl window. Can't be wasted if Trey isn't ready. Ken, you know, I said a minute ago that the 49ers knocked out of the park. I think you just did as well. That first sentence right there, too many fans of player over what's best for the team. If there's any sentence that talks about the 49ers fan base better than that, I haven't found one, because that is exactly what we've seen for the last year and a half. And you blasted that one. That one's somewhere over on Waveland Avenue, I think, right now, rolling towards the water in Chicago. That was a good one, Ken. Good shot. Absolutely.
Yeah, the tribalism, it's not rational, right? To have divided into these camps where we're supporting a single player as opposed to what is best for the organization. And you would think for the fan base, you would always be looking towards what's best for the organization, even if in the short term it may not be best for one individual player. If it is best for the organization over the long haul, you would think it would be good for that player as well. And I think that's the case here, that in the short term, could this negatively impact Trey? Yes, I will absolutely acknowledge that. I think there is, enough pressure already, but now we're talking about making the team better. He's supported by Jimmy Garoppolo. He can improve with, Jimmy there continuing to hopefully mentor him in some regard. So again, a positive in my note.
Yeah, it's a positive. And, before we brought this one up, though, you were talking about, how is this going to affect the locker room? How is this going to impact emotions and some of those types of things? From your point of view, do you think that there might be a quarterback controversy looming in San Francisco?
Yes and no. Yes, there absolutely is a quarterback controversy looming for the fan base. And I think that matters. If Trey struggles, which it's fair to assume at some point this season that he will, the best quarterbacks in the league struggle at various points. Certainly the young qualified quarterbacks within this league struggle at certain points throughout. It's fair to assume that when that happens, there will be a loud, audible cry from a certain percentage of the fan base that's calling for Jimmy Garoppolo to step in. In particular, if early in the season, as I predicted, unfortunately, in the win-loss record, if the Niners are hovering closer to 500 than above, you could hear those calls for Jimmy Garoppolo getting louder and louder. And that creates an atmosphere that isn't conducive for a young quarterback to feel comfortable, to feel like it is his team. When the entire fan base is not behind you, that could have a polarizing effect on him, let alone if there is a drift in the locker room, right? I assume that Kyle Shanahan will do a good job of ensuring that there isn't a true quarterback controversy on the team, that the locker room stays behind Trey Lance, that he's clear within the locker room who the starting quarterback is. But I think that outside noise that will come primarily from the fan base will be too loud to completely ignore.
Excuse me. I do too. I think it's going to be very loud. I think it's going to be very similar to what we had last year, and it's going to be constant questions. I can almost guarantee you tomorrow when Kyle Shanahan steps to the podium, what the first question is going to be, and what the second question is going to be, and what the third question is going to be. And at some point it'll stop, but it's going to be a lot of questions about what this means. Is there a quarterback controversy? I don't think there's one right now. I don't think there's a quarterback controversy this moment. Do I see a quarterback controversy looming? If Trey Lance plays in the games the way that he played in training camp, 100%. 100%, there will be a quarterback controversy because, again, he was okay. He was okay. There were ups and there were downs. There was a good start and there was a rough start. There was a better amount of play, and then, when they got back from Minnesota, there were a couple of tough practices there, and then his game against Houston. I know people are going to want to blame that all on the offensive line. I don't. I think the offensive line definitely had a role in the way that game played out, but Trey Lance had a role in it as well. And I can see if this team doesn't start off hot, it's going to be constant pressure on the head coach to make sure that there isn't one. This isn't Jimmy and this isn't Joe versus Steve. Neither one of these guys are going to be Hall of Fame quarterbacks, but
right.
This is as close to that as you can get.
It's wild. If you see, let me throw this hypothetical out there to you, Jack, because this is one that quite honestly perplexes me. If you're the 49ers front office and you're attempting to, at some point, hand the reins over to Trey Lance, acknowledging that this could be a transition year and it could get ugly. But if we fall to or below 500, the crowd is already calling for Jimmy Garoppolo to come in. Trey Lance is struggling a little bit. As Kyle Shanahan, as John Lynch, when you look towards the future still remains, to me, Trey Lance. Can you really turn over a game or two to Jimmy Garoppolo to right the ship without permanently damaging the confidence of your young quarterback who is the future of the franchise? Can you give Jimmy a couple of games during the season if Trey is struggling?
Well, and that's the thing, right? That is the piece. Can you pull him out without killing his confidence? And I think that is something that, if I'll give you my point of view on this, is if I'm Kyle Shanahan, if I'm going to pull a quarterback and I'm going to say, once you make that move, if I'm going to pull Trey Lance out and I'm going to start Jimmy Garoppolo over him, I need to make sure that when I make that move, I am committed to that move. Because you can't say, I'm going to bench you for this guy and then bring you back.
Right.
You can, but it usually doesn't work out very well. Usually you make that move only if you decide that you're going to stick with it, not long term, like for forever, but for the rest of that season. It usually doesn't work out for the team if you go back and forth. All you got to do is look at the 1998, I think it was, 49ers. Steve Young got hurt. That team was 3-1. They went on a bad losing streak, and they Jeff Garcia, and they put in somebody else, and they brought Garcia back. Once Garcia came back, he was a master. But if the 49ers get into that situation, it doesn't matter. This will be a major loss of the season. So
major loss. Yeah, you would think that it would need to get to the point, pretty much like it did last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, where we got close if Trey Lance had been healthy, we may have made the switch, but then the Niners turned it on. So you could see that if the season begins to unfold in a way where it looks like it's going the wrong direction, maybe they pull the chute. But to your point, you can't waffle back and forth because that just sends a horrible message to a young quarterback you're attempting to develop into a long-term starter.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it definitely does. And really quick, I do need to pull this one up. It's Aaron V. He says, Jack, you are crazy. Aaron, absolutely, my friend. Thank you for watching.
Those are the facts.
Yes, that. I am 100% crazy, and I don't have a problem admitting it. Mark Hot comes in with a $10 super chat. Thank you very much. He says, this move is a stall tactic so the Niners can find a trade partner. They are not going to give Jimmy away to anyone, especially to Seattle. They are both in control. I'll let you take this one first.
It's entirely possible, right? I mean, when I first started my live stream, it was right off of the cuff, and I was like, the no trade clause, probably going to see Jimmy here throughout the entirety of the season. I mean, just to be clear, the only thing the no trade clause does is it forces Jimmy Garoppolo to sign off on whatever team the 49ers may want to negotiate with. The true question for me is, are you going to carry three quarterbacks through the cutdown tomorrow? And if you're not, if you're going into the season with just Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo on this roster, you've now opened up Nate Sudfeld or Brock Purdy or both to get swooped up by another team. Now, I don't think that's likely, but in that case, you don't have a clear backup quarterback to replace Jimmy if you trade him away. So I'm not entirely convinced that this move signals a trade being more likely. I think that there are very few possibilities for a trade out there, barring a significant injury, which is all chance at this point. My view is this signals Jimmy Garoppolo will be with this team through 2022. Just my personal take on it, but that's where I land.
I think so too. I think what this move represents, if you want to talk about it like in this term of a stall tactic, I think this move represents that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a trade partner. There was nobody who was willing to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo saw that. So why not stay where you are? You're already with the team that you're familiar with. You know everything of what to expect here. So, you go ahead and you let it play out. And is it a stall tactic? I don't think that you can say that it's not. I don't think that it's a stall tactic necessarily. I think it makes the roster better. I do think that it works in the Niners' favor because now you go into the season with Jimmy Garoppolo on your roster. He's going to be quite a bit less than he was going to cost you originally. And if somebody should get injured in week 4 or 5 or 6, guess who the teams are going to call? Probably Jimmy Garoppolo, because now he's only $6.5 million. And it bumps up if you start schemes. So it's quite interesting. This whole thing's going to play out. I don't know. I don't think it's a quarterback controversy. Let me ask you this question. And here's another one based off of it's kind of a quarterback controversy kind of thing. Do you feel that Kyle Shanahan is hedging his bet right now with this move?
I do not. Maybe I'm being foolish here, but I don't believe that this is a reaction to anything that Trey Lance has or has not done to this point. I believe that the 49ers are viewing this move as a business move, as what is the most prudent way to move forward. How do we get something? How do we maximize the value of this asset? And they felt foolish, quite frankly, in just releasing a starting caliber quarterback. And I have to agree with it. It's why I was so staunchly in my belief that the 49ers would be successful in trading Jimmy Garoppolo. I see him as a starting level quarterback within the NFL. That has very distinct value. I think that John Lynch said to himself, it's unreasonable to cut Jimmy Garoppolo. He did the math in his head. He said, we can, let go of Jimmy, get back that $24 million and roll with Nate Sudfeld as our backup, or we can attempt to renegotiate with Jimmy. And if successful, have him as the backup quarterback on this roster, thus retaining that valuable asset for ourselves and get ourselves a compensatory draft pick when he signs somewhere next offseason. That logic applies here in my mind more than the idea of a pendulum reaction to Trey Lance having a less than stellar third preseason game or the practices leading up to it.
Yeah, I don't I don't know if I don't necessarily totally buy into the whole hedging thought that he's really hedging his bet here. Again, this kind of goes back to the stalling, like he said, the super chat said a moment ago. I'm a little bit still trying to completely figure out that piece of it. Like I said, I can tell you this. There was definitely Trey Lance was not. If Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, let me put it this way. If Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo were competing for the starting quarterback job this offseason in training camp, and it was Jimmy Garoppolo what he did last year in training camp against Trey Lance what he did this year in training camp, meaning both guys working against the ones because we didn't get to see Jimmy Garoppolo would be the starting quarterback of the 49ers in 2022. Trey Lance was good. He wasn't that much better. And at $6.5 million, Jimmy Garoppolo was definitely better. Jimmy Garoppolo right now, his contract at $6.5 million, just so you know, is also cheaper than Trey Lance. So it's an I mean, I know it goes up if he plays, all those kind of things. But right. It's just the whole thing's just interesting. I'm fascinated by the fact that they actually did this. I'm fascinated by the fact that Garoppolo took the deal. I think Jimmy Garoppolo might end up somewhere else eventually. But it's fantastic.
It really is. From a content perspective, couldn't have asked for any better news today, right? I'm 100% with you there that there's still very much a possibility of Jimmy Garoppolo ending up elsewhere. I do view it as being dependent most likely upon an injury elsewhere. But I love that this move flies in the face of any team that said, well, the Niners are going to have to cut him. I do like the fact that this is sort of a, Ross's FU to them of like, hey, man, like, no, you're not getting Jimmy for free. We may have to cut somebody that we'd like to keep on our 53-man roster to do it, but you're not getting this valuable asset without giving us something. Because if anybody's getting something for free, it's going to be us. We will renegotiate the contract and keep Jimmy for ourselves. And I do, I find it interesting that people want to continue to attempt to insist that Jimmy Garoppolo has zero value. And to me, that's just hyperbole. That's just exaggeration. Yes, it's entirely true that was Jimmy Garoppolo's value as high as the 49ers and even myself believed it to be at the beginning of this sequence? No, it very clearly wasn't. Is that most likely due to the surgery that Jimmy Garoppolo got? Yes. I think when you hear people talk about Jimmy Garoppolo in league circles, it's very clear the man has value. And, I understand that we have passionate feelings about Jimmy Garoppolo because he's been on our team for quite some time. But to say something like he's trash or doesn't have value, I just don't think that properly acknowledges the situation. To your point, if it were purely about who could be more successful in this offense this year, it would still probably favor Jimmy Garoppolo. It's the long-term benefit of Trey Lance that the 49ers are investing in moving forward with him.
Yeah, I think so. And real quick, I want to pull up this comment from USMC 49er. He says, they both have to operate behind this line, meaning this offensive line. You're a funny man, Jack. Cool. And I'm going to say this. Against Houston, when the offensive line was awful, Trey Lance was 7 of 11. He was 6 for 10 on passes under 10 yards. He was 1 for 4 when he threw the ball past 10 yards. Obviously, the offensive line plays a role in that. You can't show me one pass that Trey Lance completed in that game that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't complete. I mean, the dump off to the tight end on the boot motion, I'm pretty sure Jimmy can do that one. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Garoppolo can complete the throw to Juwan Jennings. Pretty sure he could hit the one to Kyle Juszczyk along the right sideline. I'm pretty sure that he can hit the one over the middle that was low, that was caught by Malik Turner. I'm not pretty sure. I know because we've seen him do it over and over and over again as a member of the 49ers. And last but not least, I feel very confident that Jimmy Garoppolo would have hit Deebo Samuel instead of taking a sack on 1st and 10 to open up the second drive. That's the one that a lot of people talked about. Dan Orlovsky talked about. That's the difference between having a quarterback that can get the ball out quick, knows what he's seen, and a rookie who isn't quite there yet with his mechanics when it comes to the footwork and those kind of things. Now, that doesn't mean that that's why this decision was made. I'm just giving you my opinion on that. Do I think Trey Lance has a high ceiling? Absolutely. Do I think Trey Lance's floor is lower than people want to believe? Yes. He is at worst slightly worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. I wouldn't say, like, let's say Jimmy Garoppolo would be like a 70 rating. I don't know, just putting a number out there, right?
Sure.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo, with what he normally does, is like, say, a 80, because he's about a B quarterback in the NFL. He's about a 16, somewhere in that ballpark. And I would say Trey Lance right now is probably, somewhere in the 25 to 30 range right now. The reason is because of consistency. The reason is because because of some of the short throw inaccuracy, consistency. That is an issue for Trey Lance that he's going to deal with, and we'll see. Maybe he's going to be solid, and we're going to find out. I put a tweet out today, and it said, you can have the best roster in the league, but it doesn't matter if your quarterback doesn't make a play. Now, that wasn't geared toward, when I tweeted that out, I was not thinking of Trey Lance. I was just thinking quarterbacks in general. I know that people took it as me taking a shot at Trey Lance, but that one in particular, just so let me explain what that was about. My thought was, I saw the 49ers were ranked at number 1. I don't know who Trey Lance is going to be. I understand that people think he's way up here, and then there's the other people that are way down here, and then there's those of us who are kind of like, well, let's wait and see where he is. And I'm kind of in that wait and see approach. I like the positives. I don't like the negatives that I see with him, so I'm in the middle. And that was really more geared towards, we're going to see. But Swan Song, who I don't know if he's watching this or not, but he used to watch all the shows, and he responded to me on Twitter, and he mentioned Trent Dilfer. Well, if you remember the year that Trent Dilfer won the Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, the play that broke that AFC Championship game wide open was Trent Dilfer getting the ball to Sharp, not Shannon Sharp, the other Sharp. Right. No, it is Shannon Sharp.
Shannon Sharp, the tight end.
Yeah, Sterling Sharp was the older one.
Right.
He hits Shannon Sharp on the post, and he takes 90-something yards and just kills Oakland. Take it back to 1990 for the older folks, and I'm sorry because this is going to bring tears to Rob's eyes.
Oh, no. Don't do it.
Jeff Hostetler and his mobility was the difference in the Giants winning that game over the 49ers. I still, to this day, believe that if Phil Simms had started that game, the 49ers beat the Giants because Jeff Hostetler on that day in San Francisco killed the 49ers defense with his ability just to buy time and move around and complete passes off of it. And those are just two examples. You can go through others, but those are two examples of quarterbacks who had really good teams around them, weren't the best quarterbacks, but they were able to find a way to make a play. Joe Flacco, right? Joe Flacco in that season that they won. Eli Manning. You can go through so many quarterbacks whose teams won a Super Bowl because at some point in that playoff run, their quarterback made the play to get them there. And that's kind of the reason why I said that.
It makes sense. Absolutely does.
Let's see real quick. We've got Mark Nunes. Thank you for the super chat. $1.99. He says it's $8.5 million because we gave Sudfeld $2 million guaranteed. I'm not sure who you're talking about. Maybe you're saying because of I know it's $6.5 million guaranteed for Garoppolo, but you're right. The 49ers now have $8.5 million between Sudfeld and Garoppolo guaranteed, which I think is still right around the number that Trey Lance is going to be playing under this year. I think he's right around 8 million something. He's the thank you to Coach Noah Johnston, who has put this out on Twitter numerous times this weekend about how Trey Lance has the 8th highest cap hit of the 49ers. So makes sense.
It's wild.
It is.
Those early first round draft picks, man, they cost money.
And it shows you how top heavy the 49ers are with the contracts that they have given out to some of these guys and how top heavy they're going to be when they get Nick Bosa's deal done next year. Or the year after. True. At some point, they're going to get it done.
Yes.
Chris Royal for the super chat $4.99 says, man, had to work a long shift and come home to the news that Jimmy is staying. I think I need a beer or 3. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, the thing is, it's not it's not bad news. This is
No.
actually very good. This should be looked at as very good news for the 49ers from the standpoint of they now have probably the best quarterback room in the league, and they have a salary cap that went from 25.5 million down to 6.5 million.
Yeah.
It doesn't really get a whole lot better than that, I think, if you're a 49er fan. Really,
I gotta say,
take Jimmy Garoppolo's name out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's the key. You can't take Jimmy's name out of it because that's the name that inspires so much vitriol from the fan base. But so I understand those people that are feeling mixed emotions from this. The fan base that I don't understand, the portion of the fan base that I don't understand, are those that feel as if this is a dumpster fire, that don't see a positive side to this move. That to me is very confusing because, again, working through this logically, if you take a depth chart and just focus in on the quarterback room and you see Trey Lance and Nate Sudfeld, you remove Nate Sudfeld's name, put in Jimmy Garoppolo for $7 million, right? A difference of $5 million, but I get it. You're still paying Nate because that's guaranteed. That is a better team. You just can't convince me otherwise. So to fail to see that positive, to me, is operating with blinders on. And that's the portion of this fan base that, again, is into this tribalism of supporting, one individual as opposed to what's best for the organization. It would seem to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Really quick before I keep talking, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that one too. Every once in a while, I remember. Most of the time, I don't because I'm too old to remember that unless somebody reminds me. And Raphael 5629ers isn't reminding me enough like he usually does in these streams. But Jeremy Clark says this one. This isn't a super chat, but I want to bring this up because I think it's accurate. Jack, definitely the most critical of Lance by far. Sure, I'll eat it or wear it. I don't mind being called the most critical of Trey Lance. I think quite frankly, I'm the most realistic of what's happening with Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like that paints you unfairly, Jack, because I think that there's a whole camp of people that are extremely critical and don't back up their criticisms. It is just Trey Lance is a bust. Why? Well, because he's a bust. Right? There's no logic to it. What I have gotten from you in following your camp reports and in hearing what you've said about Trey Lance is that, yes, it has skewed towards critical, but you always back it up with what you're actually seeing on the field and why that leads you to a conclusion. So unlike some other people who I would label as far more critical than you have been on Trey Lance, what I have gotten from you is true observation and then you extrapolating from that observation and your experience to say why you believe Trey may be struggling in certain areas. It feels like realistic coverage to me. It's not sugar-coated, but it's also not, and this is what I want to make sure to call out, just ridiculously negative for no reason, because I think there is that type of coverage out there, and yours is not that.
Yeah, and hopefully if you think that I'm negative or overly critical, when we're done with this show, take a minute and search on Twitter or on YouTube, Jackhammer_NFL Trey Lance film review versus Houston. Watch my film review of Houston and then tell me if I'm overly critical. And the reason I ask you to do that is because I went through play-by-play, gave the good and the bad. And I will say this, the miss to George Kittle in the Houston game, that was something that we have seen repeatedly during training camp on short throws, on out routes, under 5 to 10 yards. We've seen him do that a lot, just off the fingertips of receivers. He did it. He's done it a lot. The throw into the ground on the throw to Brandon Ayuk when he was moving to his right, that's not an easy throw because he's running full speed to his right. The reason I made a point to talk about that as much as I did with my Hammer Nails co-host Jesse Naylor on Twitter was because during practice on Tuesday, Trey Lance was rolling to his right with Brandon Ayuk coming back to him, and he threw the ball into the ground. It was almost a carbon copy of what we saw in the game. So what you're seeing is when I'm being looked at as being overly negative on Trey Lance, I think it's really because I've seen so much of these things show up on the practice field and they're translating over into what we're seeing in the games. And I think he has a lot of upside. he has a lot of inconsistencies, and he needs to clean up those pieces of his game. And he is only 22. But to have your quarterback dealing with throwing mechanic issues like they are dealing with Trey Lance should be a concern. Is it going to play out that way? We're going to find out. And when he does well, you will hear me say that he did well.
What I love is that right there. Hey, what we're seeing is this, and that's an observation of some inconsistencies. I don't think people really refute that because the visual evidence is there. But then you have this entire group that want to say, well, I'm just glossing over that because I believe that he is going to continue to progress. Whereas I do think the more reasonable and rational take is what you're saying there. We'll see. Like, I'm not betting against it. I'm not betting for it. I am waiting until I get the empirical evidence, and then I will again review what has been done and do my film breakdown as you so succinctly do. And I think that that's a fair way to view it, that there's a ton of upside and Lance has to continue to put some things together. If he doesn't, it could be problematic. If he does, there's a hell of a lot of upside for him.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That is about as good as you can put it. Flav comes in with a super chat. Thank you very much. He says, we get to see if Trey is ready. And if not, we have Jimmy, so we don't throw away the season. Best move of the offseason. Let's go win a Super Bowl. Let's friggin' go faithful. Go ahead, Rob.
This one kind of walks that tightrope that I'm talking about, because what's not clear is where along the road you would pull this ripcord, right? You get to see if Trey is ready. But if not does happen and he struggles, back to that question of, well, you can't really pull Trey, put Jimmy in, and then reinsert Trey 2 games later and expect there not to be some, collateral damage that occurred from that move. So it's how far do you let the season go? How poorly could Trey play before you put in Jimmy? And that's where it gets messy to me. So that's the part of this whole entire saga I'll be keeping my eye on. And that's where the weight falls on John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, who okayed this move. They need to be able to hold down this locker room and make sure that things don't fall apart.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so. And that's kind of what Jay says here, right? He says, no matter how anyone feels about Jimmy G, if God forbid Trey gets injured, I feel more confident that Jimmy Garoppolo can win us some games than Sudfeld or Purdy. No offense to those 2 players. I really like the fact that you say no offense, because we don't need to bash these guys to make the point. And you're right. I think Jimmy Garoppolo gives you a better chance to win than Trey Lance. Wow, Jack. Somebody clip that and make sure you put that on Twitter for me. Wow.
Yeah, that's it. You're done for, pal.
I know. I think that you're right. I do think that Jimmy Garoppolo gives you a better chance of winning than Sudfeld or Purdy. You talk about a Freudian slip right there. Whoa, that was a good one. That was a good one. And then as far as going back to Flav's comment real quick, because I didn't answer that, but I go back to, I'm not sure if there's a point. I'm not sure where that point would be in which you go from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo if the season's ineffective. Kyle Shanahan stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo last year, even when the season was on life support. It seemed to me, from what I've kind of gathered with what he said, is if the 49ers had lost that Monday night game to the Rams, they would have felt the season was done, and at that point they would have turned to Trey Lance. We'll see if he gives Trey Lance that same benefit of the doubt, really. And at that point, if you go that far with Trey Lance, though, why would you turn to Jimmy Garoppolo just to finish off a lost season?
Right.
So maybe he's going to have a quicker. It's interesting. I mean, remember, Jimmy Garoppolo had a thumb that could barely grip a football, and he started throughout the playoffs in Week 18. I mean, it's wild.
Very wild. Very wild, especially when you take into account Kyle Shanahan's own comments about how we were moving forward to Trey Lance, and now here we are.
Well, and I think that's the part of it that's interesting, because he's not very that's not the way that he usually is, he's pretty straightforward with it. And Blind Tom has a super chat. I'm trying to find it, Blind Tom. I see it here, but I can't get to where it is on my sheet here. Oh, here we go. Blind Tom says, thank you very much. $10. That's very, very nice. And plus you're a member of the Toolbox, which is why you got the $sign there. He says, guys, this is good news for Brock Purdy. He should be 3rd, and he's a winner. What do you think?
So if we carry 3 quarterbacks, I would assume it's absolutely Brock Purdy. Your third quarterback is typically your developmental quarterback. I don't view Nate Sudfeld as a developmental candidate. He seemed like a very suitable, cheap backup quarterback, not someone that I would have felt great about turning the reins over to, but someone that could have stepped in for a game or two. If you're keeping Jimmy Garoppolo, unless it is some ruse that the 49ers are just trying to trade him and they're keeping him, still out of the meetings and all of that, which I don't buy into at all, just throwing that out there as, I don't know, a 1 in a million possibility, acknowledging that it's possible. I think they go into the season with just 2 quarterbacks, but I have to admit that if they go 3, it seems like it would be Brock Purdy. And if I'm keeping 1 quarterback on the practice squad, again, if I've got Jimmy Garoppolo as my backup, I might consider the practice squad spot to be better for Brock Purdy because, again, he is that developmental guy that might be your backup going forward. You'd still have him on that controlled rookie contract for the following 3 seasons after Jimmy goes on to his new team at the conclusion of this season. So I see it benefiting Purdy in some situations.
Yeah, that's why I like talking with you, because you just help me make my answer to this better. Because in reality, I think this is bad news for Brock Purdy. The 49ers aren't going to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster. I doubt that they're going to carry 3. So I have been saying that in order to, because the talk was about how do you keep 3 quarterbacks. And I had said that in my 53-man roster prediction, one of the things that I put down, and I've said it here on this channel as well, is in order to get Brock Purdy, maybe to protect him from being cut, you waive Nate Sudfeld, because you gave him $2 million guaranteed. And maybe part of that $2 million guaranteed was that allows you to be a little flexible with his roster spot. So you waive him and you waive him and you sign him to your practice squad. That way you got Jimmy Garoppolo on your roster. So your roster would be Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo. Practice squad guy is Nate Sudfeld. On game day, it could still be Nate Sudfeld as your backup with Jimmy Garoppolo on the side. You might not want Jimmy, especially early on, because Jimmy Garoppolo, remember, he hasn't practiced at all, and we're only a week and a half away from the start of the season. So early on, he's probably not going to be able to be the active backup anyway. So you can utilize some rocks, playing around with the roster a little bit here to make it work. So there you go. It's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. It's going to be Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nate Sudfeld to the practice squad. Brock Purdy, we love you, crazy legs, but sorry. Oh, you're muted, Rob. Rob, you're muted.
I did mute myself. They're taking down trees in my neighborhood. I'm trying to be the courteous man. I'm sure my mic is cutting it out anyway. But I have Trey Lance and Nate Sudfeld on my 53-man roster prediction. Now I'm taking Nate off of there and throwing in Jimmy. I think they only roll through with 2 quarterbacks, assuming that if anyone swooped up, one or the other won't be, and they can be put onto the practice squad, whether it's Purdy or Nate Sudfeld. So I'm going to stick with that. I think that it is 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, acknowledging the 49ers may have a higher priority on, one or the other and feel like it's necessary, especially if they do plan to actively shop Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, in my humble opinion, I think he's here for the entire season.
Yeah, I most likely. And here's the other piece on it. You just mentioned the 53-man roster. Is there any 49ers writer who is going to actually have a correct 53-man roster unless they cheated and gave it out today around 4:00?
No way. No one, I'm guessing no one got it right. Maybe someone jokingly put together a roster with Jimmy Garoppolo on it as a laugh. And now they're like, oh, that's perfect now.
Yeah, that would be funny. And then real quick, Flav comes back, and this was a little bit earlier, $4.99. Thank you again, Flav, for this one. He says, Jack, it was clear Trey still has a lot of issues with mechanics, accuracy, etc. We appreciate and need your unbiased info. Thank you, and true fans gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody does a really good job of covering this team. And that's the biggest thing. I'm just a little guy. I've just started doing this a year and a half ago, and I just say what I feel, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. Sometimes people love it. Sometimes people hate it. So it's okay. And I thank you for the super chat, and I thank you for the support. And I think everybody, I want to say thanks to everybody that's watching this. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about, Rob, that we missed when it comes to 49ers quarterbacks?
When it comes to the quarterbacks, I just have to say that as a fan, like if I take out of context the idea that this gives me a fair amount to talk about, well, even if I take that into context, I can imagine the headaches I'm going to have from some of the questions that are going to be asked. I can picture Kyle Shanahan and his level of frustration. I'm equally impressed with Jimmy agreeing to this deal, taking so little money to come back. And the terms of the deal are very creative. I give them that. If he's traded, he's going to make much more. If Trey Lance gets injured, he's going to make much more. But if he is just a backup quarterback, it's an extremely favorable deal for the team. So I'm impressed that Jimmy went along and signed off on that. I'm also impressed that Kyle Shanahan willingly went back into a world where he is now going to face these comments and questions over and over and over again, because at the end of last season, he looked like he was done. He looked like he was about to walk past the podium out into the audience and start taking on beat reporters one by one. And now he's just back in the same boat. He's going to be answering these questions week in and week out.
That's what's so fun. That's really quick. That is what's funny about it, because I know he didn't seem to like those questions that were coming at him. Talking about Kyle Shanahan, during that press conference that we had last week, on Tuesday of last week, I guess it was, because he went on the radio the next day with KMBR and on the morning show, and they made a joke about it at the end of their show about how, hey, at least we didn't ask you any Trey Lance questions, and he was like, thank God, basically. and here we are a week later, and guess who's walking back through that door tomorrow? It's wild. And no, I kind of set you up there. I thought you might take it a different direction, and I'm glad you kept with the quarterbacks. But let me ask you this. Jimmy Garoppolo's coming back to the 49ers. How about Jaquiski Tartt?
Ooh, that's a great call. So, I mean, obviously, the two wanted to part ways. I mean, there just was never any serious talk. Jaquiski ended up in Philly. But now that he's been released there, like that felt like, okay, I need a fresh start. The Niners want a fresh start. Let's just break this thing apart. No need to come together and try and negotiate terms. We both want to go our separate ways. Jaquiski goes his separate way, and it to this point has not worked out. I think at that level, Jaquiski has to say to himself, well, maybe I should reconsider. When I look at the potential landing spots out there, when I look at how close it is to the season, what's the most advantageous way for me to get a role on some team that proves my value within this sport? The opening for the 49ers feels like a fit. And for the Niners, you said, no, we have these young players that we want to develop, but now you're looking at Jimmy Ward being out. It would feel like a minimum of 4 games, and your depth is already being tested. What Jaquiski brings to the table. It feels like there could be a reuniting about to happen. Jaquiski put out a fairly cryptic tweet earlier that I replied to. Let's see if I can even see it there. It was something about a circle or something like that. I'll try and find it while you are rolling through. Yeah, please.
I got it right here. He says, it was about a couple hours ago, and he says, everything come in circles. It all work out.
That seems to indicate a circle would bring him back to SF. So I do feel like they will at least explore it.
I think here's the thing. I think it makes 100%, again, similar to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. It makes total sense for the 49ers to go and get Jaquiski Tartt. I know that Jaquiski Tartt didn't make it in Philadelphia. I don't really care. I know how Jaquiski Tartt plays in the 49ers defense, and that's all I care about. I don't care about what happened in Philadelphia. I don't even know what happened in Philadelphia other than the fact that he never got off the third team over there. But I know that in San Francisco, when he's played, he's been damn good, and he's been very similar to Jimmy Garoppolo in that way. They're very similar players. One of them's a quarterback, one of them's a safety. But when Jimmy Garoppolo plays, he's good enough for the team to win a lot of games. And when Jaquiski Tartt plays, he is very good, and the team usually wins a lot of games. So I think this is a no-brainer for the 49ers to want to make this move, or that he should be back, I should say. Now, my question is, does Jaquiski Tartt want to be with the 49ers? That's where the question lies, I believe. Right.
Now, question for you, though. If you're the Niners, and whether Jaquiski does or not, I'm reading into his tweet that he seems to be open to it. I'm interpreting that tweet as being a circle, bringing him right on back to Santa Clara. So it would seem to me that he's open to it. If you're the Niners and you look at this as, patching over an injury to Jimmy Ward, do they explore this more likely now to bring him in, get him ready, have him play against Chicago and have to take up one of your 53-man spots? Or do you wait until Jimmy Ward has made the roster, maybe even beyond week 1, so that Jaquiski Tartt's salary isn't fully guaranteed and you can play him weeks 2, 3, and 4, potentially beyond if Jimmy Ward's injury lingers, but that way his salary isn't guaranteed and you can release him again? Do you see one as more likely than the other?
I would say, like, that's a good. I mean, you put some really good questions together there, and I would say the way that I could see it playing out is Jimmy Ward's going to have to be on the roster day 1, right?
Right.
In order
has to make the 53 in order to not be on IR for the full season.
Right. So you put him on IR, or you get through the cut down, right? Yep. He's on the roster, and then after that's all said and done, then you go ahead, you put him on the IR, and you bring in Jaquiski Tartt, and at that point, it becomes a competition between Jaquiski Tartt and Tarvarius Moore.
Right.
Who stays on the roster? And the player that shows the most is the guy that plays, and it could be Jaquiski Tartt over Tarvarius Moore. I tell you right now, if I'm the 49ers and you were asking me who makes the roster, Tarvarius Moore or Jaquiski Tartt, if that was the situation, if they get themselves into this, my answer to that is this exact same thing that we're talking about with Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes. It's not close. Jimmy Garoppolo was a much better backup quarterback than anybody else that the 49ers could have been brought in. Jaquiski Tartt, for what he does in the 49ers scheme, is a much better safety than any backup that they have on their roster currently,
right,
in any roster that they could bring, anybody they can bring in somewhere else. And I know that Jaquiski Tartt had a bad drop in the NFC Championship game. Absolutely. It didn't cost the 49ers that game, but it definitely didn't help them. And that game might have been different if the guy that we started out the show, Jimmy Garoppolo, had actually hit George Kittle when he was open down the middle. Had actually thrown the ball down the middle to Brandon Ayuk a couple of times when he was open. So it all goes full circle, guys.
It does. Full circle indeed. Jaquiski has that right.
Absolutely. And things got really interested. I'm really happy that tomorrow I get to go to 49ers practice.
That is going to be a very, very intense atmosphere, my friend.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and can't wait to get up there and see what this season was already going to be fun, I think, because just the fact that you had a young starting quarterback taking over a roster, which I think is very good.
Yes.
You have all the people that are, as you and I talked about on your channel on Friday, who are panicking about the offensive lineman situation, which from everything that I've seen, seemed to get a little bit more clear today when Mike McGlinchey returned. What was that conversation you and I had on Friday? What do you remember what I said? Maybe you don't. Maybe I should.
I do not. You cannot count. There's one thing you cannot count on me for, Jack. It's my short-term memory.
There you go. Well, then what
you can count on.
Then what we'll say is, the 49ers, what I had said was the 49ers offensive line will be fine as long as either Mike McGlinchey or Trent Williams is starting. If both of them are out there, then I think this offensive line is going to be way better than anybody thinks. And if one of them is out there, the offensive line can be worked around and they'll be fine. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see how this goes. I cannot wait till September 11th in Chicago. And I know you're going to be there too.
Yes. Very excited for that game in Chicago. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And real quick, there's another super chat that I missed over here, and I got to hit this one. Big Flav, he's been busy today with the super chats. He says, "What percent do you all?" Okay, Flav says, "What percent do y'all give Jimmy taking over at quarterback strictly because Trey isn't performing well enough? Have to think Jimmy feels good about his chances if he signed this deal. I'll say 70%. What do you think?"
That to me seems extremely high. I mean, I think that the chances of Jimmy coming in and supplanting Trey Lance are not the overwhelming majority. I see this as still Trey Lance's team. this move being made to, again, get value for an asset that the 49ers believe to have value, even though other people within the league were refusing to pony up said value. So I would put it more in the 20 to 30%, right? Acknowledging that obviously injury could happen, but if we're strictly talking about replacing Trey for performance, I think Kyle Shanahan would have had to have seen a lot, because he knows what that does to a young quarterback psyche. When you pull him out and put in Jimmy Garoppolo, that's a potential death blow.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's lower than 70 for sure. I think it's lower than 50. I think you're probably in the right ballpark. It's just I don't know. I'd have to go back and pay. I didn't pay close enough attention to Kyle Shanahan's career, when he was in Washington, but I don't recall him doing that with any of his quarterbacks in Washington. It was either RG3 was healthy and he started, or RG3 was injured and the other quarterback started, and then the same thing the following year. Either RG3 was healthy and I don't, and in Cleveland, it was kind of the same way. I think he got pressured a little bit there to make the move to the kid out of Texas A&M that wasn't any good, but they'd used a high draft pick on him. So he was kind of forced to do that. We know for sure it didn't happen in Atlanta, and it didn't happen with the 49ers this year with Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't think that this move was made necessarily to say we're going to bench him or that kind of thing. And
there's actually an Albert Breer tweet that I want to bring in now. I looked it up while you were going there. Albert Breer tweeted this 14 minutes ago. 3 more things on the 49ers deal with Jimmy Garoppolo. Number 1, the team communicated with both quarterbacks for the last few days on this. So that answers the question of, was Lance aware that this was happening prior to the deal going down? Answer there seems to be yes. Number 2, a clear part of that was a commitment to Trey Lance as starter. So whether this is just messaging being put out by the team or true, they are leading with that Trey Lance is still the guy. And then number 3, a key. This deal does not happen unless Garoppolo takes less in base money than Lance. And he goes on to point out what Lance's deal is over 4 years and how what Garoppolo took at $7 million as a base guarantee was less than the average of 8-point-something million there. So at least the team is attempting to put out some information. Could also be 100% true that they took all these steps to make it feel as if, hey, yes, we're making this move, but it's still Trey's team.
Yeah, everything points to this being Trey's team. Trey Lance is going to start week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to start week 1. It's going to be Trey Lance week 1. It's going to be Trey Lance week 2. We know all this. It's Trey's team. They've said it all offseason. I don't think it changes right now. I know they've said some things about trading Jimmy Garoppolo and what have you. This move, again, just gives the 49ers the best backup quarterback in the league. It gives them potentially almost $20 million of salary cap that's going to push forward to 2023. Really, this is more about if Trey Lance gets injured. I think it's more about if Trey Lance gets injured, the 49ers have a security blanket. Or if another quarterback around the NFL gets injured, they have a security blanket to maybe make that move and get some things. Also, if Jimmy Garoppolo signs a nice heavy deal next year in the offseason and he's been on the roster throughout this year, 49ers get compensation that way as well, potentially, depending on how many players they sign in free agency and how many they lose. So it's a really good deal all around.
It is. And we laugh at the idea of Jimmy Garoppolo having gotten cut and then going off to Seattle. But play that tape forward and add in a hypothetical of Trey Lance struggling, the Niners struggling, their record not being what we predicted it to be, and potentially the Seahawks having a better season than you anticipated. If you wrote a storyline wherein the Niners cut Jimmy, got nothing for him, Seattle picks him up and gets a better record this season than the Niners, that could lead to John Lynch being fired on the spot there. And so there is something to this idea of, keeping that asset on your team so that you don't have a negative storyline down the road about being proven right that asset had value. You just couldn't extract that value from the asset. You let him go for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris Royal with another super chat, member of the Toolbox, says if Jimmy got cut, he'd make no money. Correct? Correct. So this offer gave him 6 million reasons to take the deal. Agree. He would make no money from the 49ers. Somebody probably would have signed him. but they might not have signed him for $6 million, or who knows what they would have given him. There's a lot of upside in this deal for Jimmy Garoppolo too, if he does play. So let's not forget that. I mean, that has to be a part of it.
Right. If he ends up starting for the Niners or anywhere elsewhere, he can make up to 16, 17 million. That's not too shabby.
No. And so that's the other piece of it too. So I don't think that this is a deal where necessarily they're going to trade, they're just buying time for a week or two. I think this is a little more of a long-term play, but we'll see. And we'll see by the time we get together next Friday, we'll find out more about Jimmy Garoppolo. Jaworski Tart might be a member of the 49ers. The whole deal is going to be going down by 1:00 tomorrow with the 53-man roster. So it's going to be a lot of discussions this week over the 49ers. And then next Monday when we talk, we'll be getting ready for a game. So that's kind of the week ahead for the 49ers and Rob and myself. So yeah, it's been a fun one, Rob.
Very fun indeed. We got a little curveball. We're going to do the 53-man roster projections. I still have that on my channel mixed in for anyone that wants to see my take. Jack, I know that you've been writing about the roster as well. I'm sure we'll have that out. But you just can't pass up talking about Jimmy G staying with the Niners for the 2022 season. It's the news we've all been waiting for. Maybe not the news that a lot of people wanted, but the news we have been waiting for.
Yes. Where in the world will Jimmy be has been the discussion since January 30th when the 49ers lost to the Rams. And now we have the answer. He's going to be right back where he's always been. And it was not expecting that news today, but interesting. An interesting day to say the least. And I'm looking forward to my 53-man roster is up already at the 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. I put that up the other day, actually yesterday morning. I put that up. So yes, I am incorrect when it comes to the quarterback position, but the other 52 are stone cold locks. We'll see. But Rob, thank you so much for coming on. I always appreciate you for making the time to do this with me.
Always a pleasure, Jack. Always a pleasure.
And all you folks over in the comment section, if you guys can do me a favor, and everybody watching this thing that isn't in the comment section, hit that like button before you leave. That'd be fantastic. And then also, if you're not a member of the channel, you can become a member of the Toolbox. That's on there, or hit the subscribe button as well and become a subscriber. And when you subscribe, hit that little bell so that you're notified when we go live and you don't miss it. And as I just pointed out, 49ers.pressdemocrat.com, right underneath Rob right there. Go check that out and make that a bookmark on your computer, or your home screen, whatever, so that you can check it out on a daily basis. We're getting to that point of the year where it's going to be updated every day. So that would be much appreciated, especially since they pay my bills. So thanks a lot, everybody. Rob, thank you. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday. We'll be back soon with more 49ers talk. Take care, everybody.